15% of the kids in Washington, D.C. are unhoused, right, in the public school system.
So why don't we fix that instead
Exactly.
of... Well, I'm fully in favor of that, of course. What we should be doing is giving people an equal opportunity to succeed. What we're now doing is not giving people an opportunity to succeed and then saying, oh, you're black, let's give you a leg up into university. That doesn't work.
Hey guys, what's up? This is Matt Miller with PolitiBrawl News. Watch this conservative debater, Konstantin Kisin, who is the host of the Trigonometry channel. I suggest you go check out his stuff. He's a very smart guy. Go check out his channel, Trigonometry. He takes on these two far-left experts, one of which is a former Greek politician and self-described Marxist. Yeah, and he's from Greece. Remember the country that basically destroyed itself with socialism? This guy apparently played a part in that. Watch as these two radical leftists try to convince the conservative that he is the beneficiary of white male privilege. His response to this is perfect, in my opinion. Watch it right here.
Where is this great world to which we are comparing ourselves to? You cannot compare our civilization to utopia. You have to compare it to reality. And in reality, we are the best civilization in existence today. And that is why we must maintain our dominance around the world.
And no one seems to be arguing with that. Are we good enough?
I don't agree with that at all.
Okay.
Lots of people are arguing
We'll
with
come
that.
back to that. But are we good enough? I just want to...
We're never going to be good enough. Are you good enough? Are you good? Am I good enough as a human being? Have I worked out the right way to treat my wife or my son so that I could say, I no longer need to improve. I am this perfect person. Okay. Is there any human being in the world who's not a psychopath who can make that claim? No. So why should we expect our civilization to be perfect? We should only expect it to be as perfect as it possibly can be and better than others. That's all that there is. Only comparison and nothing else. And if you're comparing us to the land of milk and honey, you are dangerous.
Okay, but I would agree there's a third thing. It's not just accepting that we're not perfect and that we're better than others, but actually actively working to improve the internal, which I'm not hearing you advocate for.
Well, you haven't asked me about it. I'm very happy to advocate it. We had this discussion, very briefly, we had this discussion over dinner last night about diversity and inclusion and all of these programs which are intended to bring people into the thing. And I say to all of that, the right objective, difficult as it is to achieve in any society, is that there should be zero discrimination. Zero discrimination against people. And what we have today in the modern West is a new framework of discrimination. We have decided that it is okay to discriminate against white people. It's okay to discriminate. Oh, you laugh. Well, let me give you some statistics. Fantastic, I enjoy that.
Well, before you give us some statistics.
No, let me give some statistics.
You can come back
if you are Jewish or Asian or white, it is much harder for you to get into an American university because all of those groups are widely discriminated against in that society.
That's simply untrue.
That is factually correct.
That is simply untrue.
For the same SAT score, you are much less likely to get in. The BBC has whole realms of jobs that are not available to white people. There are internships that prohibit white people from applying. Now, I don't regard myself as white. I'm a first-generation Russian, Ukrainian, Greek, Jewish immigrant. I hate this stuff, and I hate it because it unfairly privileges people who do not deserve the privilege. What we should be doing is eliminating discrimination, not introducing new types of discrimination.
Cynthia.
I think when you're born on first base and everybody else is trying to come up behind you. I was not born on first base. You already are.
How?
As a man. As a man compared to half of the population. You have advantages that are undeniable.
Really?
They are. And you already are ahead of the curve in applications to things, in the way that resumes are reviewed. And so, and you have a privilege of walking around in the world being perceived as white, even if you don't perceive yourself that way, in terms of how you're treated.
I was literally called a Paki at school.
Okay.
How am I perceived as white?
Well, it depends on where you are in the world.
Right. So in my country, I was name-called and discriminated against for being brown. So I have a privilege. You've decided by looking at me that I have privilege?
We all have privilege on this panel. Everyone does. Everyone carries bits of it, right? I'm just saying, and I'm not saying that there aren't differences in admissions. I mean,
there are.
This is one of the left's most absurd and annoying arguments, that people who appear to be white have privilege, or that people who are men or masculine, whatever, have privilege inherently without even knowing anything about them, without even knowing these people's history personally. I mean, are you going to tell me that the young men who stormed the beaches of Normandy in World War II, right, back when the world was sexist, apparently, many leftists would say, and most of these guys were white or they were Italian, first-generation immigrants, and they signed up for the army, or there was a draft in World War II. They had to join the military, so they didn't really have much of a choice. And so many of them got gunned down during vicious fighting. And the left wants you to think that those men have privilege because they're men. The women are safe at home. They're doing their role in the war, which was very important too, keeping the home front, manufacturing, all the things that they did, extremely important. But this idea that men who take more dangerous jobs, harder jobs, right? That they're privileged. They die more due to things like self-inflicted death. I don't want to say the word can get demonetized here, but they also die in the workplace more because they take these more dangerous jobs, construction jobs, jobs that put them near harmful substances, things like that women just don't opt for as much as men do. See, the left and the feminist, they are only looking towards the top 1% of men. And they say, well, the CEOs and the politicians are mostly men, so there must be this society-wide imbalance that we need to correct for. But they don't look at the bottom 99% of men in American society or in Western society that clearly do not have it better. And I think that there's advantages and disadvantages to being a man and to being a woman. You can't just say that one side is privileged and the other is not. When you look at, a woman who is born into a upper middle class or an upper class family who never really had to lift a finger and had everything handed to her, how does a construction worker who has to work his ass off and climb high, dangerous buildings and stuff all day, how is that man privileged over that woman? If you don't look at the actual cases, the actual individuals themselves, then you're totally missing the reality. And that's why this concept is completely blind. It wants you to look at collectives and groups of people and make judgments based on those collective groups rather than observing the individual. And it's the same thing with race. How could you say that a blue-collar, lower-class person who is white, grew up with their family on food stamps, didn't grow up, get the greatest education, is not going to be able to afford to go to college? How does that person have privilege over a Hispanic or black person whose family was middle class and put them through, college, had every advantage? It just doesn't make any sense. You have to look at more than just the skin deep observation about people or the gender observation about people in order to discern privilege. If anything, it's more of a class thing than it would be the superficial attributes that the left is hell-bent on judging people over. We're not supposed to judge people on their skin color. We're not supposed to judge people on their gender, but that's precisely what the left is doing here. Let's keep going.
But those differences are also coming on the heels of widespread, well-acknowledged data. The SAT scores are also biased, that people live in really different racially segregated neighborhoods with different school experiences, where 15% of the kids in Washington, D.C. are unhoused, right, in the public school system.
So why don't we fix that instead
Exactly.
of... Well, I'm fully in favor of that, of course. What we should be doing is giving people an equal opportunity to succeed. What we're now doing is not giving people an opportunity to succeed and then saying, oh, you're black, let's give you a leg up into university. That doesn't work.
It's not a leg up. It's an acknowledgement that there are differences in the experiences of kids who grow up, let's say, in poverty. And that from certain school districts, so I think that there's, yes, so invest the energy there.
It's the end of meritocracy. It's the end of meritocracy.
It never started. Meritocracy never begun to end. There's never been meritocracy.
Okay, let me rephrase for the pedants.
Privilege.
Let me rephrase for the pedants.
And
it's the end of the pursuit of meritocracy as the goal. No. I agree with Cynthia. The United States Constitution, as written in its original
Positive discrimination is an attempt to create meritocracy.
Yeah, a failed attempt. An attempt that promotes people who are not qualified.
But not trying is even more of a failure.
I did not say we should not try. I repeat for the third time.
Can I come in as
it's difficult to talk when you
minute.
interrupt me every 3 words. I did not say we should not try. I think you heard me say twice now that we should be seeking to eliminate discrimination. I think I heard myself say that. So the problem with this agenda is that it ends the pursuit of meritocracy as the singular goal for which we should be striving, and instead reintroduces a new form of discrimination that advantages people not for their talents, not for their drive, not for their passion, but for the fact that they have a certain skin color, a certain set of genitals, or whatever else. It is completely antithetical to the goals of the West.
Right.
So, of course, Konstantin is right here. This leftist agenda is the end of meritocracy. And he's saying, the Greek socialist guy is saying that meritocracy can only be achieved by affirmative action, DEI, these types of heavy-handed manipulation of who is receiving job roles, who's getting into colleges, and that this will create meritocracy, but that we're seeing the opposite effect. I mean, by the nature of this sort of plan and dealing with this in inequality and inequity, what you're doing is you're putting people in these roles that haven't actually earned places in those roles because they were selected based on superficial attributes like their skin color, like their gender, like their sexual orientation, not because they were the best person that was the most qualified to fill that role. So you're going to end up with people who are less qualified and people who are more qualified having to sit out and failing to achieve these roles because they weren't the right skin color. There's no way to do this DEI or affirmative action, as it used to be called, without basically shortchanging people who are qualified, who are the best candidates, and having them sit on the sidelines while you put in people who demographically fit who you want to put in those roles. And I think meritocracy is worth fighting for. That makes sure that we have the best people in leadership positions and in important critical roles in the job market, in our government, everywhere, in academia. People who are qualified, people who are competent to run this country. If we sacrifice that in the name of equity, heavy-handed, centralized control of our society, we're going to end up with an inferior society of people who are not competent and not the most qualified people. I mean, it seems simple, but apparently the left doesn't understand any of this, or they do and they pretend not to, because they have other goals in mind. They want to be able to check a box that says we hired this many people of this race, we admitted this many people of this sexual orientation and this race into this class of university, and that's their end goal because they get funding for it, they get a pat on the back from their other woke liberal colleagues. And we know that meritocracy is not the goal of the left. Meritocracy is the goal of conservatives. I mean, plain and simple. We want the best people regardless of race. I really don't care what people's race is, what their ethnic background is, what if they like men, women, whatever. If you're the best person for the job, if you're the best person, if you're the most qualified person, you should get the role, whatever it is in society. Thank you guys so much for watching this clip. I want to know what you thought of this debate in the comments. If you liked the video, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Ring the notification bell so you get notified when we post new videos. Thank you for watching this episode of PolitiBrawl News, and I'll see you in the next one.